Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics. In this video, I'd like to discuss a couple of policies that Boris Johnson is apparently implementing to benefit some of the poorer regions of the country. To what extent his statements are true and beneficial is what I want to talk about really, and whether or not it is what he promised. But first, if you'd like to see more of my videos, then please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, with the next phase of Brexit looming, remember Brexit isn't going to get done this month, but it's going to go to the next phase. Boris Johnson is keen to cement the support of particularly Leave voters in the north of England, most especially, but in regions around the country that have been disaffected for quite a while. He's announced one policy, and there are reports of another policy that sound very beneficial. This would be raising the national living wage, this is the minimum wage basically, and changing funding rules to encourage more investment to poorer regions within the UK. Again, this would benefit the north of England where he wants to shore up his support. And what I want to do first is take a look at the living wage. Now, currently the UK living wage, as it's called, for over 25s, because it depends on your age, is £8.21 an hour. Now, from April 2020, it will increase to £8.72 an hour. Now, Boris Johnson is trumpeting this as the largest ever increase in the national living wage. It has to be said, though, what he's doing is he's comparing that with previous Conservative budgets. So he's not comparing it with Labour's time in government. He's only comparing himself with his predecessors within the Conservative government. But still, it's a large increase. I'm not going to complain about that. He's definitely going to be emphasising it as an example of his desire to make good on his promises to ordinary working people. Now, before I look at the detail, I would like to bring up a comment I saw someone on social media making. They suggested that we applaud good policies and only attack bad ones, because if we attack the government on everything, I mean, what does it look like to people who are trying to be a bit objective? It just makes it much easier for the likes of Boris Johnson to make any criticism of him just sound partisan. Well, they're always attacking the government, therefore they're not really being all that genuine about it. And it is true, to seem credible, you have to support the good things the government do. And even Boris Johnson's government will do some good things. He sort of has to keep people on side. So it is important just to attack the bad, and I don't intend to be any different. But is this living wage increase good or bad? Now, on the face of it, of course it is definitely good, and will make a significant improvement to people's lives. An extra 51 pence an hour doesn't necessarily sound like much to some people, but then those some people are not the ones who need the minimum wage. But to those who do need it, those who do a job where their wages would, without the minimum wage, would be much less, it will be a definite boon. And let's face facts, let's be fair to the Conservatives here, they don't really understand economic realities. They're constantly thinking that having a minimum wage at all is somehow bad for the economy, despite the fact that the reverse is shown to be true time and time again. I mean, it's simple enough. Even the theory is simple. Low wage earners spend their money. They don't really have money to save, so it all gets spent, thus boosting the economy. So 100% of their wages are boosting the economy. Wealthy business owners are much more likely to save or even squirrel extra money offshore, doing nothing for the economy. But the Conservatives don't get that, and so any significant increase in the national living wage is to be applauded. It will, in the short term, definitely make a lot of people's lives better. So, however, and there was always going to be a however, there are a couple of figures that we need to measure that new rate of £8.72 against. So, first of all, Boris Johnson promised an increase of £10.50. So it's short of that. However, however, he only has to do that this Parliament. He didn't say he would do it immediately. So, we don't have to judge him on that target right now. We do need to bear that in mind for the next general election, because it will, according to him, be implemented by the next general election. So he has about 4 or 5 years. But second of all, the Conservative Party have been in government for a decade now. And they have made promises about the national living wage on several occasions. The last promise, as far as I can tell, was for an increase to £9 an hour. They have made higher promises in the past, but I think the last one was £9. They brought that down a bit. And according to Boris Johnson, the economy is doing really well. So it should have been easy to meet that. He can't really say, oh, the economy is not doing too well. No, he said it's booming. He and his ministers are saying that our economy is doing really well. I mean, you look at the figures and decide for yourself, but he's saying it is. So there's no, why wouldn't he have met the £9 one that the party promised? So, the national living wage that the Conservative government promised for 2020 is not going to be met. So you could look at it through that prism as well. But shall we just say that it is still better than if he hadn't offered an increase at all, or even if he'd have increased it by a much smaller amount? And that he is still promising to get it up to £10.50 in 2024. I know some people will say, oh, well, Boris Johnson's different. I mean, I don't buy that notion that he's a different Prime Minister, because that allows the Conservatives to keep recycling their leaders. Every time a leader becomes unpopular, get rid of them, get the new one in. The new one says, oh yeah, the last one was really rubbish, but vote for me and I'll be better. And they never are. So you do have to judge the party, not just the individual there. But if you are someone who just wants to judge the individual, okay, well, he's promised £10.50. Then there's the second policy. So Boris Johnson is reportedly going to rewrite the rules to allow for more investment of public money outside of London and the southeast of England. Now, I'll say straight off the bat, although there are no details yet on how this is going to work, I'm not going to go, oh, here's Boris Johnson again saying he's going to do a thing, but no details. I'm not going to do that because the government haven't officially announced this policy yet, so we wouldn't expect details. But the current issue is that the rules say that money has to be spent in a way that maximises benefit to the economy. Now, the problem with that is that most investment is therefore drawn into the black hole of London and the southeast of England. It's where most people live. You've got your easy, ready access to a large workforce, where the best infrastructure is, where the best skills are to be found, where much of the inward investment from abroad goes. But it deprives the rest of the UK of its share of investments and fuels resentment as a result. So a policy to redistribute the wealth of the nation is definitely going to be applauded by someone like me. It's a good old-fashioned socialist policy, that. And if a Labour government talks about that, I'd be gushing with praise. But there are a couple of questions that I have as to whether it's going to provide benefit. Now, the first one is, can he do it? If the current rules demand that spending maximises a benefit to the economy, and that is what is stopping investment elsewhere, or at least massively reducing it, then by definition, changing those rules means that you will now be spending money in a way that doesn't maximise benefit to the economy. And what does that do? That means a drag effect on the economy. Now, if you really believe that Boris Johnson's Brexit will deliver an economic golden age for Britain, then that's fine. You can argue that the economy will flourish, and promoting less efficient economic policies in order to bring the nation together to share in this new age will still be a net benefit to everyone in the country, even those who might be seeing some diverting of funds away. However, nobody who has any qualifications to say anything about the economy believes that any form of Brexit will deliver a boost to Britain's economy, and that Boris Johnson's current direction for his no-deal Brexit at the end of 2020 is going to hit the economy very hard indeed. And considering that our economy is, at the moment, only just growing at above zero, implementing anything that knocks the economy at all is likely to send us into recession. Now, there are those of us who can appreciate that, if you've got 0.3% growth, you can call it growth if you like, but it's next to nothing. You could have 0.1% contraction, and that's still contraction, even though it's next to nothing. They're both about the same. But if you do the first one, the 0.3% growth for half a year, you get to say that your economy is growing. I mean, it's falling behind other economies, but it's growing. And you get to argue that, and most people will buy that because they don't look at the details. But if you do the latter, where it's 0.1% contraction, which is near enough nothing, it's not that much different to the 0.3% growth, but you do that for half a year, you're in recession. And recession will be plastered all over the media. You will be in recession. So I doubt very much whether Johnson will risk a policy ever seeing the light of day that does that. But the second question is, assuming that Johnson is mad enough to risk a recession over it, and given that neglected regions of the UK would not complain if boosting their individual economies is the result of it, it's whether or not there's an overall boost to those local economies. Because you could look at it and say, well, of course, if you're going to divert more money, then that means those regions are going to get more money. Does it? As with everything connected to spending with the Conservatives, you always have to look at where the money is going. So consider this. They would have to change the rules to make public expenditure not demonstrate a strong benefit to the economy. Now, that doesn't sound like a recipe for diverting more money to those regions to me. It sounds like a recipe for corruption in awarding government contracts, where the awarding bodies don't even have to consider who's going to give them the best return for that money. We might see more money invested in projects outside of the London bubble, but we may not see any more money actually making its way into those local economies. In addition, even if the policy did provide a boost, the poorer regions, who have already been hit hardest by Brexit, are going to continue to be hit hardest under Johnson's plans as well. I mean, if a mugger steals all your money, but then gives you a tenner back to get a taxi home, are you supposed to be pleased? Oh, I gave you a tenner. That's nice. I'm just a stranger giving you a tenner. No, because it's a net loss. When the general election looms, if Johnson implements this scheme, he will doubtless point to the extra money that's been diverted to the north of England in order to get those Conservative MPs to retain their seats, as well as parts of Wales. Not so much Scotland, because although inevitably some of this money would find its way to Scotland as well, he knows it's going to be slim pickings getting MPs there. But you have to look at the overall picture. Did the economies get stronger or weaker in those regions? Don't just look at the money that came in. You have to look at the money that came out as well. Did the economies get stronger or weaker? Because everything that impacts those economies will have been down to Boris Johnson. He has no excuse now. He has a massive majority in Parliament of obedient MPs. He is now king of the UK and can do what he likes. But that is an analysis to do later. Beginning in a year's time, if he follows through on his promises and doesn't undermine them with others that makes life worse as a net effect for those people, great, fantastic, I will applaud that. Cheer the government on when it gets things right and only attack them when they do something awful. And there will be plenty of that. In fact, I may not even get through the rest of today without some of that. But for now, I will give the government tentative support for those proposals, and we'll keep an eye on whether or not there is a net overall benefit to people's lives as a result. So I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button, and if you'd like to support the channel further, then also please click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.